Well, all right, folks. Here we go. As a lot of you know, I've been under the weather and, yeah, just not feeling myself. Sergeant Bob, good to see you over on D-Live there. It looks like we have the Texan and Raid on Antifa over on Foxhole. Nice to see you, folks. Yeah, I'm in a slightly cantankerous mood. Could be that I've been sick and laying around all frickin' day. I don't know. Hey, Deckard, good to see you. Anyway. Yeah, not in the best of moods. I keep trying to keep this shit to myself. And we're doing call-ins tonight. Yeah, we'll be doing that here shortly. And Sergeant Bob, yeah, I want you to call in. I'm gonna see if I can get those pictures you sent me up, just so people know that we ain't just bullshitting them. Yeah. Anyway, I've been quietly collecting my thoughts the last few days, and of course, you know, whenever you're laying around, you might not want to watch the news so much. And looks like Uncle Krusty's having a little problem getting on for our call-in. Uncle Krusty, if you go over to the Montana Free Discord, I know you're listening, so you head over to the Montana Free Discord and you'll see the link that I put in there for you. Grodness, thank you for the diamond. Appreciate it. But I've been laying around and I've been listening to the news and I've been listening to everybody bitch, moan, and whine about what's going on. And how it was this party that did it to us and that party that did it to us. And I sit here and I talk to you guys. Well, I try to talk to you every week. Unless I'm laying on my deathbed and I can't breathe. And that's what I've had the last couple of days. But that's gone now. But I'm wondering what it's going to take for people to realize that we've did it to ourselves. And we did it over and over and over again. It had nothing to do with what party was in power. It had nothing to do with who made what rule. And I'll prove it to you tonight. Right around the 1930s, for some reason we thought it was important for us to basically start the whole dual income idea. To have both parents out of the home. We all wanted to own our own house. We all needed the brand new car. So naturally, in any relationship, if one person's working and one person's staying home, then obviously that person staying home needs to get out of the house and start making their own money. What we failed to realize was how important it was to have that person in the home. The 1940s rolled around and we went off to war, and luckily, our men were off fighting and our women were off working. And I say luckily because that's what kept the war machine moving. That's where Rosie the Riveter came from. And we weren't bad off yet. We had pride in our country still. Everything was moving smoothly. Then the late 1950s rolled around. And these people that we'd asked to go to work so we could have more money at home realized that now they have lost what control they had at home, and couldn't exactly claim that they owned their home anymore, or that they put a lot of effort into their home, or they had no pride in their home anymore. And they started a movement so they could have some sort of voice in the place that they worked. And I don't blame them for doing this. That's usually the progression. If you're going to work somewhere, you want to be able to have a line of work. And you want to be able to control what happens there. Then we decided to go into the 1960s, where it was peace, love, and rock and roll. And that's all that fucking mattered in the world. We were raved about places like Woodstock. A lot of good music came out of Woodstock, but a lot of other things came out too. There was a whole sexual revolution that we went into. It's funny that we use the term peace, love, and rock and roll, and it turns out in the 60s, by the end of it, we were not going to have anything other than rock and roll. It became more sex, war, and rock and roll in the 70s, when we proceeded to again send our young men off to war. In a war in which they were winning, until again the politicians got involved. The taste for war had left the American public. By the way, that's us. And we proceeded to lose a lot of our young men and women. Because we really didn't have a good idea of what the fuck we were fighting for anymore. The 80s rolled around, and things were starting to feel a little bit better. Felt like we were slowly getting our heads screwed on. Or back on, I guess I should say. But then came the 90s. And with the 90s brought a president that, well, we could only say was a product of the 60s. And he took the prestige away from that office in the short amount of time that he was in there, and I'm sure all of you can figure out who I'm talking about. So we started back down our slippery slope again of not giving two shits. Then 9/11 came. And I know there's a lot of scuttlebutt and a lot of talk about 9/11 and whether or not who did what and what did when. But no matter how you look at it, that was the moment that all of the traction that we had built in the 80s, we signed off in one fell swoop. We decided that safety was more important than freedom. Now you get to roll the time clock ahead to today and look at what we're fighting. We're fighting the loss of our First Amendment, the loss of our Second Amendment, hell, the loss of all 10. Then you start looking back, and you wonder how much did we actually win? The reason that we got into, the undisputed reason that we got into World War II was because there was a nutbag out there that was preaching about genocide. Now, the real reason that we got into it is because they came on our soil and fucked with us first. But that doesn't look real good in the history books. So we took after a man called Adolf Hitler for performing genocide against his people. And yet, in reality, when you look at today, yes, Adolf Hitler lost the battle, and yes, Adolf Hitler got to commit suicide in a bunker and die a broken man. But I argue that in some cases, he won. I.e. Margaret Sanger, the founder and sole proprietor for quite a while of Planned Parenthood. The one for sure legal case of genocide of the American public. And we praise her, set her on a pedestal, and think that it's the greatest thing. It's the highest form of rights. You get to choose the right to what happens to your body. But then we wash all that away with the current problem, because obviously we don't have freedom of our own bodies. Ask Smokey Randy. I see him over in D-Live. Ask him how many Australians feel that they have the freedom of their own body. How many Americans? And they did it again by turning us on ourselves. There wasn't a bullet fired. There wasn't a plane flown. There wasn't a bomb dropped. We are just actually that fucking stupid. To sit here and whine about it over and over and over again and try to point fingers at and explain why it all happened. When in reality, the reason it all happened is in the mirror every morning you wake up. So, the next time you start complaining about what's going on, shut your mouth and ask yourself what you did to stop it. Did you point out that, let's say, transgenderism, let's go down, since we're pissing everybody off tonight, that transgenderism actually is a medical disorder. It was known as gender dysphoria until we got tired of treating people and just accepted the fact that if you wanted to splay your penis out and stuff it into your body and put an implant or two in, that made you a woman. Oh, wait, no, we can't say woman because we don't use the term woman anymore. Now we say menstruating human or non-menstruating human. So the feminist movement that you had to put women on a pedestal has now gotten to the point where we literally don't even use the term anymore. Gender has become sex, and sexual preference has become gender. And what do? Well, we kowtow. We just don't look at it. It'll go away. We don't have to talk about that. It's taboo. And all it does is build larger and larger and larger and larger on the other side. Until that wall crashes down on us over and over and over again. But again, what do? Every time we give up our freedom for safety and security, instead of standing up and taking care of ourselves, we want someone else to do it. And granted, there's a lot of people in this room right now, and there's a lot of people that are listening to this show right now that feel exactly like I do. But for those of you out there that are listening going, oh my God, I can't believe he's talking about this. Well, somebody better start. Or this is not going to end well. And the bad part is you've missed every exit you possibly could so far. The only chance you have now is to take the ditch and turn around. And it's gonna fucking suck. But just remember, we were the ones that drove the car this far. We were the ones that let it go. We were the ones that gave out participation trophies instead of letting people know what it was like to lose and pick themselves up. We were the ones that decided that it was more important to own the newest car or the nicest house than it was to take care of our families at home and educate our children on our own. With the help of the public school, of course. But let me ask you something. Do you think when mom was at home and mom was helping you with your homework, that the public school had as much power as they do currently? To be able to educate your children in a way that you don't necessarily agree with, but you don't any longer have the time to pay the fuck attention to what's going on with your kid. Why? Because we're too busy. Not enough hours in the day. And then when that young man or woman decides to go out on their own and strike out into the world, we complain because, good Lord, they're soft. Well, you didn't instill any values in them. So now they get to learn them the hard way. There's two ways you can learn in this world. One is wisdom and the other one is experience. Wisdom is you learn from the fuck-ups of the people before you and don't do it. The other one is do it, fuck up, and learn not to do it again from experience. What we're asking them to do is learn from experience and bitch that they won't take our wisdom when we don't offer it up. So I ask you again, whose fault is it? When did it start? And when did we stop being Americans and start being like every other person in this world? When we were the great experiment. When we were different than anyone else out there. But it was hard work. and it wasn't something we felt was important anymore. Recently, we talked about how much influence local can have on something. And now that I've torn everybody's walls down a little bit, I'm going to give you a good story before we break over to the call-in show. And it's a story that a lot of people probably haven't heard. In fact, I know that there's a lot of folks that haven't heard this story. But it's a story that everyone needs to hear. It's a story about how a local grocery store changed the outcome of the world dramatically. They had no idea.
And now we're going to transition to our This Day in History segment brought to us by Hillsdale College. And on this day in history, in the year 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev was selected as the new leader of the Soviet Union. Many folks remember Gorbachev's name for President Ronald Reagan demanding that Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall. But many will rightly remember how Reagan's strength and Gorbachev's Democrat reforms famously brought down that wall and the Soviet Union. But there's another lesser-known story that contributed to both crashing down that you just have to hear.
September 16th started off like any other day for the employees at Randall's grocery store. They arrived at 5 a.m. and began prepping the produce and wiping down the cash registers. The smell of baked goods filled the aisles as the employees began the endless process of stocking and rotating thousands of products on hundreds of shelves. It was really just an average day in an average grocery store. Until it wasn't. The boss showed up, anxious and frazzled. Apparently, some bigwig was in town visiting the nearby space center, and they had just received word he was about to drop by the grocery store for an unscheduled tour. Who could it be? Some muckety-muck from the home office? A shareholder? Maybe Mr. Randall himself, coming by for a surprise inspection. The boss barked orders to make sure the place was tip-top, and the employees took things up a notch. A few hours later, the store was sparkling, and the mystery guest arrived. Whoever he was, he didn't work for Randall's. Looking outside through the glass, the employees could see that this was clearly a very powerful, very important man. He had an entourage with security, and the media followed close behind. He was smiling for the cameras, confident and sure. But then he walked through those automatic doors, and everything changed. The man looked as if he'd seen a ghost. He wandered up and down the aisles, slowly at first, and then with increased agitation. His expression seemed to switch back and forth between fascinated and demoralized. He paused to stare in wonderment at the fresh fish, the meat selections, and the produce department. He was enraptured, peppering the customers with questions. At one point, the man asked the store manager what type of advanced education was required to run a store as magnificent as this. The manager blushed. The employees had never seen anything like it. By all accounts, though, it was the sight of frozen pudding pops that left the visitor in utter disbelief. Like an indigenous member of some forgotten tribe deep in the Amazon who glanced up one day and saw a 747 flying overhead, this well-dressed visitor, this highly educated, undeniably successful, and clearly important individual was left slack-jawed by pudding pops. There were just so many, in such a rich variety of flavors. By the time he boarded his private plane, he was unable to speak to his staff. His world had just been elected to the new Soviet parliament, and in all his years, he had never seen so much food in one place. He later said, "When I saw those shelves crammed with hundreds, thousands of cans, cartons, and goods of every possible sort for the first time, I felt quite frankly sick with despair for the Soviet people. That such a potentially super-rich country as ours has been brought to a state of such poverty, it is terrible to think of it." And just like that, one man's loyalty to communism was completely destroyed. He returned home and promptly left the party and started making reforms. And then, just 2 years later, under his presidency, the Soviet Union would dissolve. True, Ronald Reagan told Gorbachev to tear down this wall, but back in 1989, that wall was still standing. And who knows, it might still be there today, if not for the hard-working employees at a Randall's grocery store in Clear Lake, Texas, who kept the shelves fully stocked. So another Soviet, a Soviet named Boris Yeltsin, could come face to face with a freezer full of pudding pops and change the history of the world.
Grow, what a story. This Day in History brought to you by Hillsdale College. Tear down this wall and pudding pops. More after this.
So, the next time you sit around and you think there isn't a damn thing you can do, a grocery store in a small town collapsed the USSR. Keep that in mind. Anyway, I'm gonna try to kick up a little bit of humor for you. We just get a notice that Joe Biden was at a preschool today, and my internet is dying. So this is fucking awesome. Hold on. Yeah. Awesome. Huh. Yeah, it's dropping some serious frames. Hold on, it's coming back up, but it's fighting. We're gonna make some quick output settings here, and hopefully we can help this out a little bit, because I do want to get to the call-in show, but we may have to might have to shut down here for just a bit. It's an hour early tonight. That's nice. Oh. Yeah, we're hovering around 700 kilobits per second, so. That's cute. Kill Discord here, maybe that'll help. Oh. Well, awesome. Yeah. I don't know, boys, if we're going to be going on tonight or not. I got, well, I haven't loaded you up yet. Hold on a second. Trying to see if we start getting some folks back here. We're crashing left and right, so. Man, this is fun. Hang in there, folks. We're trying to get everything back. If anybody is hearing me out there, seems good now. All right. Let's see here. Foxhole, I'm guessing, is still down. Take a look. Alright, we got a green light now. Let's see here. Take you guys back off. Alright. Wow, we are glitchy tonight. How many folks got me out there? If you're hearing me, give me a 5x5. If anything is working. No sound or motion? Okay. Well, I'm really choppy. Okay. Well, we're gonna have to, we may have to deal with the choppiness, I guess. Guess we're gonna make this a radio. Well, shit. There it goes again. Guess we may have to make this a radio show.